that was my daughter. She just came in and I was in a vibe and she broke that vibe. What were we talking about? Tabernacle. Oh, Jesus running around, eating fish, bread, prayer, songs, huge gathering, snake venom, ancient drugs and psychedelics, prayer, right? The Last Supper. Like when you read the Greek version of the Bible, which I haven't read, I'm going through the Bible now, like I'm doing the King James version. And then once I understand the King James version, then I'm definitely going to take a class on classic Greek. And that's when I'm going to become I'm going to become a very dangerous intellect. But I'm not going to go on YouTube and spout I'm just going to use it to better myself, right? Once I start to read more, start to understand the time period and these ages that we were in, and start to break down the origins of real humanity, we see festivals just pop up everywhere. Just pops up everywhere, right? When we talk about the Mayans and the Aztecs and the pyramids and the sacrifice and the drums and again, the drugs, the hallucinogens, the DMTs, the snake venom, the Antichrist and the Christ, right? Those are festivals. When we think about the Roman Empire building a Colosseum, where you buy a ticket, you sit in, you watch Christians being fed to lions and gladiators fighting to the death and songs and praises, and they're throwing out bread and wine and beer and all of this stuff, and you're having a good time, and it's 7 days. It's the Olympics. It's a festival. The Olympics is a festival. It's games, it's poetry, it's entertainment, it's jokes, it's fun, it's a collective of artists' expression in a venue with a whole bunch of people. And that's way down the line. I just gave you evidence of before Christ. That's like AD. Right? Now we can talk. Oh, I hit the wrong button. I hit the streaming button instead of the recording button. So now this is going to go live. Oh boy. I was like, I don't see the red. So then we go through the dark periods and all that stuff disappears, right? All that collective expression of artists' ideas is now lost. But it's still going on. And then we have Woodstock, right? Another festival. And then that fizzles out. And then you have Reggae Sumfest, Sting, and you're having all these festivals going on all over the world, and as we move towards present time, you have Glasgow, you have Serbia, you have Lollapalooza, you have Ozfest, you have Burning Man, right? Now, could the Burning Man be a ripoff of Moses in the desert? Could that thought come back through humanity to start another festival, like a remake, right? And it's just so funny to hear like young kids on the internet like saying like, oh my God, festivals are the new thing, and like nobody's going to the nightclub anymore. Well, People's been going to festivals since the beginning of time. The beginning of time, people have been going to festivals. Then what happens is the government will come down, crack down on the lewd behavior, the use of drugs, and then we hide, build buildings, and then we do that lewd behavior inside of a structure where it's not on public display. Right? So there's always going to be a place for nightclubs, and there's always going to be a place for festivals. And I don't think one is bigger than the other. Because clearly I live in Boston, right? You can't have a festival in January. You can't have a festival in October. You can't have a festival. You can in October, be cold. But you can't have a festival in November, December, January, February, March. Maybe March. No, you can't have a festival in March. You can't have a festival in April, right? Those are really, really cold months, right? So we have November, December, January, February, March, April. That's 6 months where you can't have a festival here. Whereas if you live in Florida or Las Vegas or Africa or Jamaica or Greece, you could have these festivals year round. So there's always going to be a place for nightclubs, just as there's always going to be a place for festivals. And I don't think one is bigger than the other. I will say this, that the reason why it looks like nightclubs is disappearing is for the obvious. Because of the fire that happened in Rhode Island. There was a huge fire in Rhode Island that killed a lot of people, right? And then we started to see big nightclubs start to condense to smaller capacities, right? We no longer want 2,000 people in a nightclub and then a fire goes off and like 1,500 people die. That's like human correction, right? That's evolution, that's adaptation, where we're like, okay, we got to figure this out, right? We have to figure this out. So then you got to understand, like, all of these events are not really that far apart, right? So you had the fire in Rhode Island, which killed a lot of people, which is heartbreaking. And then I noticed as a club photographer that venues started to shrink and it went to lounges. Anyone that's saying that nightclubs is dead wasn't alive when that fire happened. And then after that fire came COVID. And I know there's 20, 30 years or 15 years in between that, but you got to understand time doesn't exist. Everything is just compressed, right? Time is just compressed. So it's like fire in Rhode Island, then COVID. And a lot of people are still scared to be in venues with a lot of people without a mask. And I see that because I go and cover events. And when I'm covering events, I still see people still wearing a COVID mask. And yeah, like, you don't want to get sick, right? So you wear a mask. I don't want to smell your bad breath. I don't want your sneezing. I don't want to inhale your sneezing. So I get it with the COVID mask. That's also the issue that we're having with nightclubs too. Like, there's still, even though COVID is, I won't say it's over, but it's not as bad as it was. I mean, and that's left for debate. We're not here to discuss that, but there's still a lot of people in society that doesn't feel comfortable inside a venue after COVID. And you got to understand too, we're only 5 years out of COVID or 4 years out of COVID. So that trauma of COVID is still in the back of people's subconsciousness, right? It's like when you get an injury. I tore my ACL in 2004, 2008. I'm still terrified to walk. I mean, like, bro, get over yourself. But you don't want to re-injure something, right? So you don't want to go to a nightclub and get COVID and then possibly die. So a lot of people don't like being in crowded spaces. And if you wear a mask, people's gonna call you liberal, weirdo, Democrat. Like, so there's these labels that people give you because you wear a mask through ignorance. And so you don't want to, so you're like, man, screw it. I am not going to no nightclub. I'm going to go to a festival where everything's outdoors. So I think that's what's happening, right? We're just seeing a shift. But I'll end with this. You have to understand what's going on. Facebook and Instagram have these influencers that goes out and talk nonsense about festivals are great and nightclubs are dying. Nightclubs have been dying for like 200 years, right? Like, I've covered nightclubs and I've seen nightclubs go from big to small, not because nobody wants to go, because of violence, because of people getting killed in them, fires, underage drinking, violence. So there's a lot of things that happens why nightclubs are disappearing. It's not like, like these young, like a 20-year-old saying, like, come on, you sound crazy. So yeah, so nightclubs have been obviously getting smaller because of government crackdowns and all this, and now we're beginning to see, like, especially in Boston, where people are not drinking as much, right? So if you go to some bars and some nightclubs, you will see they have a non-alcoholic menu now, right? So we're shifting and moving, right? That's what life is about. It breathes. Everything's alive. This microphone's alive. The string's alive. The ear's alive. These computers are alive. This t-shirt is a living being. There's atoms and molecules in this motherfucker. So everything's going to move and shift and come back, right? It's like this intellect, like these new intellects that say nightclubs is dead and they're wearing a baggy hoodie. Like, bro, we did that in the 90s. We did that in the 90s. So everything's full circle. Another thing we need to watch is Facebook and Instagram hire influencers to spread false information. Now you will start to see you can now promote your festival on social media to sell more tickets. So what do? They tell you nightclubs is dead and festivals are the greatest. And they have these influencers spewing this fake news, right? And then as you scroll up, what shows up? It's fucking textbook with these people. Facebook and Instagram now have a new festival booth option to sell more tickets. So, are nightclubs dying? Is festivals booming? Or is it just capitalism once again talking fuckery? Yo, pilot.
Original pilot, aka Rasmully Geta Sewa. A diva! Hot girl diva, a diva. Some girl are skittle tough like a cleaver. No man no one them tell them to leave ya. A diva! Run boy, hot girl diva, a diva. Some girl are skittle tough like a cleaver. No man no one them tell them to leave ya. A diva! Run boy, diva.